Good days. Boom and boom.
Welcome to the Good Days podcast with Eddy and Charlie. And we are pretty excited because we've got a special guest with us today. Charlie, do you want to introduce our guest?
Oh, ladies and gentlemen,
Ladies and gentlemen,
Dan Whetlor.
Dan Whetlor is in the house.
Boomy,
What up,
boomy.
what up, what up?
Bro, it's so good to have
it
you.
So good
is.
to be with you guys.
Welcome back to Indiana Wesleyan University, bro.
Good to be back, man.
Yeah.
Coming down from Michigan
Michigan.
for a little hangout on campus.
Yeah, man. Michigan. It's a great time to move to Michigan. I mean, back to back, beating Ohio State. But then losing to the Horned Frogs.
Back to
That's a
back,
tough one.
yeah.
But
Oh, they had that, bro.
Dennis.
So
Yeah.
it's
Hey,
tough.
but your team is Maryland, right? Did
Yeah.
you grow up a Maryland fan?
Yeah. I mean, but we did good.
Yeah, you did. You
Yeah.
did really good.
We almost had the same record as Oklahoma. So I mean that's pretty.
That's saying something. Oh,
Let
man
that
alive.
sink in. Hey, we had a bowl game.
Man, he had to look over at Noah, our producer of this podcast. He's a Sooners fan. That's
What is
rough-
a terrapin?
tough days.
A terrapin. It's a turtle.
Oh, okay.
It's a sea turtle.
Terrapin.
What's a terrapin say? Like, "Arr."
Yeah,
It's
I
really
don't know.
intimidating, you know, when you think of mascots.
But the thing is, you could have made a more intimidating mascot because like they really play true to the turtle thing. But like, I would graphic design wise, I would have gone differently on that because especially the old symbol it was the turtle laying down and then it was just an
man.
M on the shell.
That's
Like
terrible.
that explains Maryland
Maryland's-
sports
Yeah.
in general.
yeah, too chill. Laid
It,
back,
it
not
takes us a
aggressive.
long time to catch up in front of to everybody else. That's what I'll say.
Especially
so.
when they join the Big Ten.
That's
Yeah.
right,
Boom,
bro.
boom.
Dude,
Okay, so what? Go ahead.
I got a quick story with Danny.
Yeah.
So we're coming up on Fusion. We're a month away. March 31st, April 1st. We've got great lineup with Lecrae, Tripoli, Elevation Rhythm, Doe, Hannah Watkins, Revolution, DJ Amon, Tucker. I mean, great lineup of seminar leaders like
That's
Eddie, Shigley,
Whoa!
DJ Coleman, Stacy Shaw. I mean,
Killer.
goes on and on. Olivia
Yeah.
Williamson, Becca Evenhock. I mean, a ton of people. But your freshman year,
Yeah, man.
bro, we there's this like movement to fast for 2 weeks before Fusion, which we did,
Yeah.
and you did, and Grant did, and I know
But you guys took it to a different level, man.
yeah,
that was
Trevor
crazy.
Lumpkins
Yeah, 21
did.
days.
21 days.
21 days.
21 day fast. And it was more than the Daniel fast. Like you were fasting from what?
So there was a specific group. So it was a fast we did a few different type of fasts where you fast something like, you could have fasted something like social media or like something in your life. Then there was just the Daniel fast thing. And then there was a group of us that did only liquid. So like we did not take any solid food in. It was very water based, but also just like some protein shakes or juice here and there.
Okay.
And that was
so it's
for
for 21 days.
21 days. And the point of it was all of our meal times were then replaced with prayer time for Fusion and what God was going to do on campus and in the students' lives. And then also it was prayers for our campus in general. So anytime you would feel anytime we would feel fasting, you feel this hunger. And you kind of direct that towards, may this physical hunger be a representation of my hunger for God. And so anytime you'd feel hungry, we'd also kind of set the boundary of like, hey man, like we're really gonna pray that our hunger for God would grow deeper with that. And that's what we prayed for. And and Fusion was just like amazing that year. I mean, God, it was all God in his plan and just I would say, man, the most beautiful part about that fast was that it made what God was doing at Fusion so much clearer.
Yeah.
Like it never felt clearer. So much clarity
Yes.
and so hungry that when you see what you're doing, you've been hungering for that to happen, then God begins to move in these miraculous ways.
Yeah.
Man, it just was like, it was surreal. Truly.
And you were a senior that year, right?
Oh
No, this is their freshman year.
No, I was a
Yeah.
master. I was kidding. No, this was
That's
just
the point.
freshman year.
Yeah, that's the thing. You were a
yeah.
freshman.
Literally, like
And you guys did a little plug in chapel, and like 500, I don't know, 63
It's like
or something people came down to
Yep.
say they're going to fast something
Yeah.
and commit this time to
For-
pray for Fusion, which
for
was
Fusion.
incredible.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Man.
It was pray for them, the God to move in their lives a month before the event.
Yep.
Yeah.
Literally. And yeah, that was just such a special time. And I can even talk about that more in the topic we'll get into like later, but like that played a big part into what we're going to be talking about today.
But I
too.
think one of the things too is like I think God often honors this radical act of obedience.
Oh yeah.
And so not only does he honor it in your own personal spiritual life, because that was stretching and growing for you and the group of guys that you did that with, but it was also like he responded with his spirit at Fusion, and that's just amazing.
Yeah.
So we made this deal. It's like, hey, when this is over,
We're going to celebrate.
yeah, I'm gonna take you and Grant and Trev and I think we opened it to other people, but it just ended up being us four.
Yeah.
And we waited a week afterward, or was it like a
We
day?
waited. So we got finished the fast on the Saturday, and we went on Thursday
Okay.
to Texas
So like
Roadhouse.
from Texas Roadhouse, 5 days later.
5 days.
basically.
5 days.
But it was it was weird because like I know as I'm with them on this fast, it was like it just takes time.
Yeah.
And we went to Texas,
And they got the rolls.
the roll,
And they got the steak.
the
And they
steak,
got the potatoes.
the
and
potatoes,
And they start
and
putting out.
the apps came
and
out
apps
with the
came-
loaded
oh.
fries.
Man.
And, dude, Doc.
Wow. He broke the fast in style.
Oh my goodness.
And it just wasn't long enough.
Yeah. Oh, the recommendation, especially when you do a long fast,
Yeah.
is that you would just do like soup and salad for the first week to get
to
your
ease back into
no. One thing that's a big red flag is no red meat because your body. And we were like, but we were feeling good. Like, it was
Yeah.
just like this is.
Oh, no.
We're taking it slow. Like let's test the waters. But we
And
got
Doc, they're young. You know what I'm saying? I got these
Yeah,
three
they're 18,
guys.
they're 18, 19 years old.
So
I mean,
we got
come on.
these
We got a
two freshmen
tsunami.
and an upperclassman with Trev.
And man, like I'll never there was that one moment when I was sitting there on that Texas Roadhouse with cinnamon butter on my face. And I really felt like Elijah, and I thought the chariot was coming for me, and it was gonna just take. It just was like
God was going to take you home right there.
I just was like, I cannot even. Oh my! And then we went out into the parking lot.
People thought we had lost our minds because we're laughing and sharing, and then every time somebody would say something about so we have to get up from the table, and it's like I can't breathe.
Did you start feeling it right
You
away?
just start
Oh,
because your
couldn't
body's like hasn't processed that much food in a minute, so it's like it just is like
In like
we're on back order
in
right
a
now.
month.
So we get to the parking lot. I don't know how it started.
We were just joking, we're laughing. Someone makes a joke and everything, and me and Grant like limp our bodies in the back of Charlie's truck, and Charlie
in the bed of the truck. And
in
just
the
lay
bed of the
down.
truck. We're just like, and then Trevor literally is like, "Yo, Charlie, get up!" And we're like, "What do you mean get up?" We turn around. Charlie's on the floor laughing on the pavement of Texas Roadhouse. Bros, I can't get up.
Well, we were laughing so hard you couldn't breathe.
You couldn't. It was so bad.
And Trevor was laid prostrate on the back seat of the truck because we're all laughing so hard that
Oh my God.
I was trying to get my breath.
It hurt. Like it was like you couldn't stop laughing because it was so funny, but it was so painful. Oh my gosh. Would I do it again? Yes.
Boom.
No.
Was there an explosion later?
So anyway, that was a great time. That was a great
Let's
memory.
move on.
Yeah.
You know what reminds me of all of this when we reminisce a little bit. We talked about in our podcast reminiscing. Man, it's about how God moved because our like common denominator is Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
We just did an episode where we're talking about legacy, and our relationship is based on the person of Jesus. That's what keeps Eddy and I so tied together.
Yeah.
You know, because we don't like the same sports teams, and we didn't grow up in the same town or whatever. It's Jesus. So that's so cool about all those people. So we stay tight with Grant and Trev and Hannah and all the peoples, that are part of those movements all those years because Jesus is our
Yeah.
common bond.
Man, if it matters to Jesus,
It matters to me. That's right, bro.
what?
That's from class. That's a
Yeah,
program
that's
manager.
a boom.
So you're coming out of your residency.
Mhm.
You're finishing up your master's on site up in Michigan near
Yeah.
Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
And then, but in a class that we're working on, there's this project that you dug into, and it changed during the course of the
Yeah.
of that class period where you wanted to move towards really researching and studying and digging deep into loss that people have once they graduate.
Yeah.
And then you came back, and I remember you said, "Hey, I wanna focus on what it means to lament."
Mm-hmm.
So, Doc,
Yeah.
what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think lament is something that I think is okay for us to do. You know, not only okay, but we probably don't do it enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think as pastors, we think we have to always be up. You know, we have to be on all the
Yeah.
time, and that can be draining in itself.
Yeah.
Just this pressure of feeling like you got to be on, the fake it till you know it kind of mentality.
Yeah.
And there's times when we need to legitimately lament. We need to mourn. We need to cry out to God.
Yeah.
How many of the Psalms talks about where David is crying out to God, and he's going through periods of lament, of deep sadness and sorrow, and taking the time to do that, because I think it's healthy for our soul, and not only to stay, but to let ourselves be there, but not stay there for long periods of time, but allow God to bring us out of that lament too.
Yeah.
And it's not like we can wave a wand and drink this thing and snap your fingers and you're okay. But there is also a mentality that we bring to lament, and also coming out of lament. So tell us a little bit what you learned about lament as you research this topic for your project.
Yeah. Number one, a book in the Bible is literally called Lamentations. The author is disputed. People think it could be Jeremiah or somebody else, but in a sense, if it is Jeremiah, like this book in the Bible is written right after the temple has been destroyed, and God's people have been exiled out of the promised land. Their temple has just been burnt down. And this is an author, somebody that is, whether Jeremiah or somebody else, is within that literal, just like the darkness of being exiled from the land that God has promised you, even because of your own mistakes too. And it was just this period of where you just read it, and I'll get into the one, Lamentations 3, that's very hopeful in that, but it's, for a majority of it, it just is really stating the darkness that is surrounding them and they're experiencing. And what I learned is that lament is an expression of grief and sorrow offered and submitted to God. Dave Smith, pastor, former professor here, amazing man, former mentor and friend of mine, he said to me once when we were having this sparked this whole interest for me. He said to me, Daniel, many know how to just sit in their sadness, but few know how to lament. And he said, sitting in your sadness continuously is the thought process that you are going to find the answer in yourself for your sadness. Lamenting is bringing your sadness to God and knowing you will find direction and peace in Him. Through that lament, that God knows your heart. And as I begin to think through this, I think of the fact that, I just recently left IWU, and there's so many things there was to be sad about because of that. The loss of intimate community, being so far away from my best friends. What I dreamed of, I dreamed to go to this school and do this stuff, and then suddenly the curtain falls, and it's like that, and I still
think it goes
think
faster than you
it
think
goes
it
faster
does.
than you think, and I'm then sitting there. At the time, before my wife, we got married, I was in an apartment by myself, and I'm sitting there with none of my community near me. I'm in an apartment with no furniture, and the house feels like my heart. It just feels like I'm just lonely in the table,
And
just sitting empty.
Yeah.
And what do I do with that? Do I just fake it till I make it? Do I act just like I'm happy? Well, no, because Jesus offers something greater than that. And I believe that's a posture in lament, to really not just sit with your sorrow, but sit with Jesus in your sorrow.
Wow.
And that journey, and that, so to answer that question, that is kind of like what I've learned about the basic understanding is lament, is it's not instant fixing yourself. It's not shaking it off. It's not even praying it away. It's saying, God, this is where I'm at, and I'm offering this to you because I know you are the only way for me to find any direction in the midst of this sadness, to find any hope, that I can at least have hope that I know that, Lord, like, you are faithful to me and that you're near to me. Yeah.
So Dan, like as you're processing through this and writing on it, and how cool it is to read your work, can you talk to everyone about, okay, what's the process of lamenting, but then what's the result of it coming out of that? What do you learn? How do you grow?
Yeah. First, I think the first thing is to really, whatever hat you're wearing right now in life, whatever title you're wearing out right now in life, take that all off when you begin to lament, and just accept the fact that you are a son or daughter of God. I don't know, people listening, what their parent experiences were, but the way that God designed a parent to be was to be a reflection, both the mother and the father, a reflection of Christ in the church, and a place where to step forward in that, in the same way that a child would go to their parents to know someone that loves them more than anybody else. You would lay down every other title, and the title, when you look at them, is that you are their son or daughter. In the same way in lament, you need to become childlike in that sense. You need to lay down whatever business, whatever ministry title you have. Your greatest title in that moment is knowing that you are a son or daughter of God. Step 2 is to identify the things that are really heavy on your heart. Identify those things that scare you to talk about, the scary thing, those thoughts, that things you want to complain about, those things that you didn't think were going to be easy. And you have to humble yourself before the Lord and say, God, this is the breaking of my heart. This is my lament. Like, it's not, there's a lot of people that can be really transparent, in the sense of that the difference between transparency and vulnerability is transparency, you're pretty much saying what's going on, but vulnerability is you saying what it's doing to you.
Wow.
And that's literally like when you, because that takes risk. I was just reading in a book. There's a book called Pray Like Monks, Live Like Fools by Tyler Stanley. And he talks about in there that our biggest fear in prayer sometimes is to sound naive. Our biggest fear in prayer is we're going to be disappointed by God's response. But lament invites you in to say that, man, like, be vulnerable with God. Really just share the anger you're feeling. Like, this time isn't for you to feel like, in a sense, like, oh, I got to play it safe. Like, if you're going to lament, really share. Like, there's times where I'm sitting there and I'm in a long distance relationship with my fiance the whole time. And I'm like, God, why did we have to do it this way? God, I'm so sad that she's not right next to me. God, why did you call my best friend to Australia? Why can't he be still here in Michigan with me? Why does IWU have to end? Why does life have to be so quick? Why can't you slow time down for me? And just sharing that. And that's what you got to do, is first you got to just let it all out. Don't try to make it neat. Don't try to make it nice. Don't try to put 12-point font in your thoughts or Times New Roman. Like, this isn't a paper. This is your heart that you're offering before the Lord. And then the next thing to sit with that is to get into the solitude and silence and sit with the Lord and allow him to point out the people you can begin to depend on. The biggest lie we can be told is that we don't have to depend on anybody. But Jesus would say that love God and love your neighbor. So in the same sense, depend on God, but also depend on your neighbors. Depend on your body. I desperately think that sometimes we forget that in lament, we're saying, God, why don't you speak? And he said, and often God puts people in our lives he will speak through them, and that we can be vulnerable with. Galatians 6 says, carry each other's burdens. That is as clear as day. Like, carry each other's burdens. So
I wonder if too, like, I think you're on step 3. I don't know if you have more steps than this, but I think one of the things, maybe one of the reasons why we don't lament, or at least in a healthy way, is this step 3 you're on, is we don't take the time for that solitude and silence. We are just moving on to the next thing. And so we're stuffing our feelings, we're stuffing our hurt, we're stuffing our this, and we don't have the grieving process. We are not weeping and mourning. We're just stuffing it, or we're just sweeping it under the carpet, and we're ignoring it, and we're just moving on. And when that happens, our soul is not healing, right? You know, that's part of the grieving process, and to move through things is to mourn. It is to weep. It is to kind of, and I think that, I think the solitude and silence is an important step for us to do that. And I love what you said too then. Who are the people that God has placed around us that we can depend on, that we can trust, that will speak back into our lives, life and breath, and maybe sometimes just sit with us in that morning.
And those are the points where you really have to lean on what you know to be true. Like, I didn't feel God's presence in those isolation moments. That was really hard. I was in, like, if you guys have ever read the book, The Dark Night of the Soul, that's what I experienced for 4 months. And
wow,
that was tough, because I have a close relationship with the Lord, and I never experienced something like that. But I depended on what I know to be true. Lamentations 3, he says, I remember my bitterness, I remember my gall, but this I know, and this I count on, the Lord's great love will prevail. It is good to wait for the Lord. His mercies are new every morning. Every morning I woke up, it was hard to get out of bed. Because of God's mercies, I was able to get up out of bed. And because of the people, I depended on others around me. And practically, as pastors for us here, John Mark Comer said that if you want to be a pastor, you have to know you are inviting pain into your life. You're inviting heaviness. And you need to not only learn how to lament for yourself, but lament with others. And that is the 4th step. Is the 4th and final step is knowing the hope that is before you, knowing God's character, knowing the suffering that he's experienced, knowing that Jesus himself is sitting there and was isolated. He was abandoned. All of his friends, his disciples, left him. And then all these people praising him are suddenly cursing him. Jesus knows what it's like to feel abandoned. Jesus knows what it's like to sit there at the Garden of Gethsemane and say, not my will, but your will be done. Like, I don't want to do this, but God, I need to do this because this is your will. Jesus reflects to us continuously what lament really is in his posture. And so I'd say that's the hope that we have. And that's what brings us out of it, is that we begin to realize, oh my gosh, I have people that want to carry my burdens with me. Oh my gosh, Jesus has experienced this too. Oh my goodness. Jesus has brought his people through this numerous times before. Joseph sat in prison for 7 years, and he was told that he was going to rule Egypt. And he sat in prison, and he ministered. He was put into a leadership position there, but he was in prison. The person he got out of prison, they forgot about him. There's not one character in the Bible that didn't have to lament.
Yeah. You know, Dan, when I was reading your work on this, and here we are, you know, we joke around that we're not old, we're just a little bit seasoned.
We're seasoned veterans. We're weathered.
But what I learned at my age is when I was your age, I didn't know how to lament. So what I did is I just buried it.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people are listening to the podcast right now are experiencing what you are talking about. And this will be huge for them. Don't do what I did. In fact, I thought God would be disappointed in me if I came to him with my doubts. If I came to him and said, I don't, get this. I didn't want to come across to him like I was his guy. And I didn't want to come across to anybody else like that. So when I was experiencing the same thing you're experiencing, which is really, it's really common to come from this experience of you're doing fusion with 3,000 people and you're every day hanging out and you're living in community 24/7. And anytime you want coffee or food, it's there or people.
Yep.
And all of a sudden in 12 seconds, you cross that stage, you get your diploma, and now you're in a whole
You're in the
new
middle
world.
of Michigan, and you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere.
And you're alone.
Bro.
Because
That's true.
that happened to me, and I moved to Roanoke, Virginia, and I remember sitting in that office. It's like
And nobody's there.
nobody's there. It's like, what do I do?
Yeah. It's nothing that you can it's nothing a classroom can prepare you for. And this is what I'm going to say is like, if they made a class of this, that'd be great, but you have to experience it. You have to. This is one thing. Lament is not something I learned about lament. I learned about sorrow, and people would warn me. Like, it's not like people would say that, but that's 2 years away. That's 1 year away, or I got it figured out.
Yeah.
But you can't get away because that's our humanity. Is community is the heart of the kingdom. And when we feel separated from that, it like hurts. And then to what you're saying, Charlie, any leader that believes that, then you believe that you can't be fully known and fully loved. That if Jesus really fully knew what you were experiencing, or if people really fully knew that you as a pastor were not going through something, then they wouldn't love you. They wouldn't believe in your leadership. They wouldn't believe in all that. And guess what? That I would say this is that if a student told you that, or one of your congregation members told you that, would you agree with them? No. But you, and again, the first step is laying down your title. That's where you become a son purely and say, Father, I need you. And,
Well, I think there's so much like intimacy with Jesus and wisdom that's birthed out of suffering, and we can't even begin to experience some of that without going through some of that suffering. I think the other thought is, if Jeremiah is the author of Lamentations, which we believe he is. The lament was over the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. And so we need to also keep in mind that, the small stuff in life, we need to have this emotional fortitude, this strength of character to handle disappointments in life. But where there is significant loss, the loss of friendships, the loss of a child, the loss of a friend, the loss of something that's significant in your life, that is where we need to take the time to mourn, to weep, to lament. And then this skill that you talked about last, this idea of that Scripture commands us to rejoice with those who rejoice, to mourn with those who mourn. And how to do that with others, in community, with the body, is definitely something that helps us come out of that. But I want us to remember, what is it that's significant loss in your life? Lament. Take the time to lament on those significant things. And then ask God for emotional fortitude for the small stuff in life that's just, okay, I need to be resilient, right? I need to do hard things. I need to stay in the fight. I can't just check out. And so there's this tough balance, I think. And I think sometimes we get it confused. Sometimes we think we just need to be tough all the time, or we just need to just completely crash over everything. And I think there is some balance in this. It's proper for us to lament.
It's beautiful.
Dan, it's been so cool having you, man.
Yeah, man.
It's
good to be here.
And all these type of things. You'll remember in class we talk about like information. I mean, you can glean, you can Google all kinds of information, but understanding, to really understand anything, you got to suffer. Bro, thanks for being here, man.
No problem. Thanks for having me, guys.
Can you join us in our outro?
What's the outro?
Just follow the leader.
Okay.
Follow me.
Okay.
Boom.
Boom.
And boom.